Welcome to another episode of Coming to Your Senses, where we navigate the labyrinth of the mind and emerge victorious. Now, in 2008, I entered a competition called Britain's Next Top Coach, which wasn't easy to say then, let alone now. And I was the only female to make the final and the first runner-up, and they therefore crowned me Britain's Next Top Female Coach. And it was during that whole process that I got to meet today's guest. She was one of our guest speakers. She was also on our sort of panel of judges. It was all voted for, but she was on our panel of judges as well and paid me some lovely compliments during it. She's subsequently become a friend and a colleague. So I am really delighted to welcome Alexandra Watson today, who is a UK top coach, even though she coaches people all around the world, with her main focus being about empowerment of women in leadership. And I'm delighted to welcome you to the podcast, Alex.
Thank you, Jules. Thank you for having me, and thank you for taking me down memory lane.
Yeah, I know, it's a little bit, I can't believe that's...
2008.
Oh, I know. And so much has happened between those times.
I know. Look how far we've come. And you were my favourite. I voted you to win, so just so you know.
Oh, bless you. I never knew that. I've never asked you that, but that's very nice. Thank you very much. You did actually, on one of the videos, you did pay me some really lovely compliments, which I was very chuffed with. My first question is, can you tell us about a time in your life where you came to your senses and where and what that led you to?
Oh gosh, yes. Oh, I still get tingles when I think about this. It still was such a profound moment for me that I'll never forget it as long as I live, and changed my life forever. So let me tell you the story. It was, golly, I think it was late 90s. And I was living in Harrogate, not far from where you are. And I was actually in marketing and PR. And I'd worked really, really hard to get there. I had, gone up the ladder. I was in boardrooms, and I'd found out I was really bored in the boardrooms, which was a moment for me because I was, like I say, such a hard worker and did enjoy marketing and PR, but I just felt there was something missing massively, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And I was running a business club at the time in Harrogate, and my treasurer, who was a lovely guy called Jeremy, he came up to me and we were chatting about stuff, and he said, "You know what?" He said, have you heard of Tony Robbins?" And I went, "Kind of." He said, if you're interested, I think you'd really get a lot out of these cassette tapes.
Oh my God, that shows it dates it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So he gave me like a suitcase full of cassette tapes of Tony Robbins, and it was like Unleash the Power Within things. Obviously the biggest still to this day life coach that ever was. And I just thought, I had a free weekend. I thought I'd just sit and listen to them. So I did, and I couldn't stop listening to them. I absolutely was soaking this stuff up like, it was the best thing I ever heard. Even though Tony is very American with it, very American with his coaching, I still saw past that and could really absorb what he was actually saying. And there was one question that he asked, and this was the moment my life changed. He asked, if you knew you could not fail, what would you do? And I literally stopped the cassette and went, holy moly. And I was already taking loads of notes, and I just thought, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do marketing PR anymore. I want to do something like he's doing. I want to do something that's more meaningful for me, more fulfilling, and something that is going to help a lot of people. So that's what happened. It was from that moment on, I went back after the weekend and changed all my marketing clients into coaching clients. And that was the beginning of what is now nearly a 30-year career in coaching. So that was when I came to my senses. That was the moment when the light bulb went off, and I just went, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is who I am. This is what I'm meant to do.
I often wonder whether those people who hand us that book or those cassette tapes or send us that YouTube video clip, as it would be these days, I often wonder whether, or share a podcast, nudge, nudge. I often wonder whether they have any knowing of what it is that they're doing. You know, it's such a kindness to hand that thing on, gift that on.
Yes.
And we never know. I mean, I'm pretty sure you're similar to myself. I'm forever recommending books or audios
Yeah.
or whatever it may
Always.
be to other people, and you never ever know where that's going to go. But to have such a profound impact, how was that? Firstly, how was that transition received by your colleagues? Because I would imagine, especially back then, that there would have been quite a lot of "What the hell are you doing?" or words to that effect. But also, how did they receive, not only your colleagues, but how did your clients receive that transition?
It was extraordinary because I was so jazzed up. I was so buzzing with excitement and enthusiasm and certainty that everybody just went, "Okay, Alex." And they all just said yes. So I was like, "I'm going to do this from now on, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah." And then I said to some of the clients, I said, "This is what I'm doing from now on. So I'd really love to have you with me and we could do such great things." And they're like, "Yeah, great." So it was the easiest yeses I've ever had in my entire life. And that was because I was just so set on it and so sure that this was the right thing to do, that the transitions were the easiest transitions I've ever had. There wasn't
Wow.
any battle or persuasion necessary. It was, I'm doing this. This is what I'm doing now. Are you with me? And it was very much okay, yeah. And I would say 99% of everybody came with me and backed me and supported me, which was amazing.
If you've listened to the first episode of Coming to Your Senses, you'll know that in the early 2000s, I experienced a breakdown. I tried different therapies, but it was coaching that truly helped me transform my life. Initially, when I discovered coaching, though, I couldn't afford it. And it was a kind soul who sponsored me not only to have coaching, but also to train and become a coach. And my promise to them was that I would pay it forward. And I've done that in many ways over the years, initially through social media and private Facebook group called Confidence Revolution, and also through Coming to Your Senses, the podcast. But it triggered for me a passion to really want to make and create a secure, supportive space for people to be able to come together and have conversations that transform their lives. So I created the Conscious Conversations community. It's a group where we meet on more than once a month, and we have a focused theme which is guided by the community and facilitated by me. There's hundreds of hours of learning and resources and materials to help you transform your life in a like-minded space. Because I get passionate about it and because this was my promise to pay it forward, I'm offering you the opportunity to trial it for £1 for the first month. If that appeals to you, then head to juleswyman.online/conscious conversations offer. juleswyman.online/conscious conversations offer to explore what's available for you through being part of a conscious community. It is amazing, especially because coaching, I mean, when I started 20 odd years ago, there was still a huge amount of education that I was having to do to enable people to understand what it was and that it wasn't counseling and was very different to a therapeutic journey. But I can imagine 30 years ago that there was even more of a gap, especially in the UK, and especially if you were up north.
Oh my God. The thing I used to get, which made me howl with laughter, was I'd say I'm a life coach, and they went, "Oh, which swimming pool do you work at?"
Oh, really? Brilliant. Brilliant.
I know. I'm like, "No, not the same thing. That's a lifeguard."
Wow. So what are the changes that you've noticed within how people receive coaching now and they talk about coaching now? Because
That's huge.
it's huge now.
It's huge difference. It's been a battle because, like you say, we had to use to educate people about coaching, what it was back in the day before people would even think about whether they wanted it or needed it or not. But nowadays, it's almost the opposite end. I think we're saturated with coaches, and because we don't have a governing body in coaching, everyone or anyone can call themselves a coach and have some sort of training and then say, I'm a coach. And that's okay. And I appreciate the thought and the enthusiasm, but not all coaches are made equal, in my opinion. I'd like to consider myself, because I've coached so many coaches over the years, and some of them are really, really well known now. So we've seen that development, but I also want to safeguard the standard in coaching because, like I say, I love different types of coaching and different types of coach approach and all that. And everyone needs to make it their own thing, absolutely. But not everybody has the actual, what I would call the necessary skills. And I think a lot of it you can't actually learn. I think a lot of it is innate within you, that you have to bring out. And I do believe that intuition is a huge part of that. As a coach to other people, I've used my intuitive self most of the time. I just tune into people and it all just comes out of my mouth. I never really, even though I have models and methodologies that I use, very much I'm with that person or the group. I'm sort of taking the energy of the group in, and it just flows, and I allow that to flow from me. I think if you get in the way of coaching, overthinking it, or trying to subscribe to a certain methodology that isn't necessarily authentic for you, then I don't think you will do as good as you could, coaching people and getting better results from people. So there's that, but also on the other end of that is the people, how they receive coaching. And yes, there are so many coaches out there that I think it's actually quite difficult to sort out the wheat from the chaff. Obviously, like any profession, there will be people who are great at it and people who are just, learners or not so great at it. So it's more difficult, I think, now for people to choose a good coach because the choice is so wide, and some people are better at marketing than others. It doesn't mean to say they're a better coach because they're better at marketing than others. So it is a bit of a minefield, I would say. And that's why it's so important that when you do pick a coach, and everybody I believe should be coached, is that you go for someone you absolutely resonate with, that you just intuitively know that I get on with this person. This is a person who I can really open up to and speak to. And, this person gets me. And I think that's key. And obviously that the person has some longevity in the game, has some experience and some, I would say some chops about them, and have some good reviews and good, social evidence of how good they are as a coach. Because that is, don't be blinded by sprinkles and fairy dust. You need to actually get under the skin of a coach and know if they are what they say they are. So in saying that, I'm really proud of the coaching industry as well, because of how much it's grown and how much we get out there and how much help there is out there. Nowadays, the niches of the coaching is so great. It almost seems very ridiculous to say life coach because everybody has a different niche now, and niche right down to, we have menopausal coaches now, which is fantastic. I mean, there's some fantastic people out there really just honing in on their particular skills. But yeah, there's still the generalists out there as well, the general life coaches who are very, very good as well. So it's a great industry, but you just have to be, discerning when you're choosing your coach.
Yeah, and I think that the whole point of them resonating with you, having that, if it's not somebody that you can listen to on a podcast or read their book or watch their videos, then have a chat with them, spend some
Mhm.
time and make sure. I remember I was coaching a coach a while back, and I remember her saying that I was the fourth person that she'd
Yeah.
interviewed. And she said, I kind of knew it was you I wanted to work with, but I needed to interview those other people first to know. And I said, look, I'm not asking for you to blow smoke up my ass or anything. What is the difference? Because it's really helpful to know
Yeah.
from a marketing perspective. And she said, you just weren't following the script. You weren't being methodical. And I think that anybody who learns any new skill can end up leaning on those skills a bit too much rather than actually stepping into their own and taking ownership of it. And you used one of the words that I'm always intrigued by, which is intuition. And
Mm.
I wonder whether you could expand on what you have, how intuition shows up for you, and if you could offer any sort of pointers or guidances for people how they can connect with their
Sure.
intuition more. Because I think
Yeah,
everyone knows it. I think everyone's had an experience of it, and they
totally.
still think it's something that gets shoved in a cupboard.
I agree, and I think intuition is one of those things. If I could, sort of a microphone to the world, it would be, talking about intuition very much so, because that's part of the empowerment I talk about. And I think that intuition for me, when I'm actually tuning in, it is the clearance of every other chatter and noise that's going on in my head and focusing in on someone. And it's actually the energy. You're picking up people's energy, you're picking up their vibe, and without questioning oneself or pre-editing oneself, you just come out with what you want to come out with. People have likened it to channeling and things like that, and I don't know how I feel about that. Really, I've not really explored if I feel it's a channeling of any kind. I just trust myself. I know my stuff. I've been around long enough to know my stuff. If I didn't, there'd be trouble. But I know myself enough, trust my knowledge enough that I can help someone just by listening to what they're saying. And I feel like sometimes I already know what they're going to say, and I've always said to people just starting out coaching them, tell me the short version of your story. Believe me, I'll get it. I don't need a long story for you to tell me. I want you to just tell me the tiniest amount and I will get it, I promise. And if I don't, let me know. But I always get it. And what I have always said to people, which I think is really very important as a coach, is to give them a heads up as to how you roll. Because I can be very, very empathetic and sweet and kind, but at the same time, I can give someone a loving kick in the pants. And I do explain that up front. I'll suddenly go, excuse me, absolutely no. And I will tell pure coaching, I will do some telling. And so that's how I do it, and instinctively go, and you know what I'm doing, and I say to them, if I come up with something abrupt and something like stop you in your tracks, I'm not actually talking to you, I'm talking to your fear, because that's chattering away at me. And I just want you to know that I recognize the difference between your true self and your fearful voice. And I'm going to teach you what it sounds like so you can recognize the difference and then tune out your fearful voice and go more for your own intuitive voice. And I think that's what covers and confuses us, is the fearful voice can sound so good. It can disguise itself so well and sound so rational and so clever. And you think, this is how I feel. And I say, no, that's actually a fearful thought that's disguising itself as being sensible or realistic. But in effect, it's holding you back and holding you down. So I very much do on the roll as in the middle of coaching, coach them to coach themselves in terms of this is that's your fearful voice again. Can you hear it? Can you hear the difference? And they go, oh gosh, yes, of course. Right. Now, what would you really say when fear's out of the way? And then they come out with it and they go, oh, it's like a real aha moment, a breakthrough for them when they realize the difference between those two voices. So if you can get the fearful voice out of the way, which I say is cleverly disguised as other things, that's your direct route to your intuition and your sort of more powerful self.
Mm. The analogy that popped into my head then, I often say that the thinking mind is a slippery sucker, because it is so convincing in various different ways. And when you were describing that then with a fearful voice, what sprung to my mind was that charismatic, charming person that you meet, that before you know it, you're handing over your wallet, you're handing over your front door keys, and like, yeah, no, I'm happy, please take all of this stuff. And then you walk away and you're like, hang on a second, I've been stripped of everything. What how did that happen? And that's when you were describing it, then it's like, yeah, that's what that fearful voice does. It strips you of everything, of your own
Mm.
power, your own skills, your
It
own
does.
knowledge. And I think that's so lovely to give people the opportunity to hear the difference.
Yeah.
I'm curious about Alex, and when did you notice that for yourself, that the difference between that fearful voice, and when did you start honing in on understanding or listening more to your own intuition?
That's a really good question, Hun. And, thinking back to when I was a little girl, I was an observer, not a talker at all. So I was always in observation mode. And I think that watching, because I had a big family, I have a big family, so it was a noisy place to be. And I'm naturally on stage, I'm noisy, but off stage, I'm quite quiet, which is quite typical of any kind of performance. You're usually very different on stage than you are off stage. So I am naturally quiet. And so what I found was that um, when I was in a place where I was talking out loud to people, or we were the the kind of family, everybody's got a talent. They can sing, they can dance, they can play an instrument. So we're very much of that kind of family. And so, when it's your turn to do a turn, everyone was shocked and surprised when I would get up and be probably the noisiest. And that confidence of connection with who I truly am and deciding when to bring it forward and deciding when not to bring it forward, and just having the option of knowing and the confidence of knowing that it felt right to do it now or
Mm.
not. It feels good to do it now. It feels like I want to show off a little bit. I want to do or not. And that is intuition to me as well. It's that kind of inner knowing that this is the right thing to do right now. And this is just step back a bit and just hang fire. I would always, and this was something that my parents taught me I didn't realize I was doing it, but they would say, you go into a room and you would quietly watch everybody and then decide how to interact with everyone. And I think that was my beginning of me, sort of understanding what intuition was. It's this inner guidance of knowing when to do something or not, or when to say something or not. And then when it came into my professional life, it was a natural expansion of actually not only me holding back and letting people talk, or interrupting and them saying, sorry, I'm just going to stop you there because I think that this is your fearful voice speaking. Again, it's the same feeling that I got back in those days. Is do I speak now? Yes, I do. I'm going to speak now. And off I went. So it's very much of a feeling of it's the right, just say it, say what you want. And you probably get a lot of this as well. I get a lot of, have a lot of conversations with women who are in boardrooms, and they've worked really, 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 really hard to get into that boardroom. And then their intuition kind of leaves them. And they're just full of fear, and they've got the confidence of the experience, and they like work hard, so there's an entitlement almost to being should be here, I should be here. But what I've found is that then they suddenly tune into fear rather than tune into their intuitive and more confident self. So I think that there are times in our lives when it matters, when it counts, when we're under the spotlight, when there's more pressure. It's harder to tune in to your intuition, but it's actually more essential that you tune into your intuition and recognize the difference between your fearful voice and your intuitive voice. So that's just one example of many of when you to become more self-aware of, where am I coming from right now? Am I about to say something that's coming from fear, or am I actually going to say something that's coming from my true, confident, empowered being? So that's one question people could sort of ask themselves about their own intuition levels, and to start to hone that and get better at that and more self-aware with it. So they naturally then, because it'll become habitual once you've practiced it a few times, that you are in that state anytime you want to be in that state, and you can knock away the fear, recognize the fear and knock it away straight away. If you can do that, and we all can, then you become incredibly powerful. And that's when you throw out words like unstoppable. Because
It's got to have the shoulder shimmy with it as
yeah,
well.
because that's what it's about. That's when you are unstoppable. Nobody can stop you, because your connection with your real self is so connected and so unbreakable. Nobody can infiltrate that. Nobody. So it's a hugely powerful thing to do for oneself.
Yeah, definitely. What's just sprung to mind is how much I notice in conversations that invitation to be unstoppable actually has a lot of people running in the opposite direction, because I think that they think that, I don't know, please correct me if you've experienced something different, is that unstoppable means I'm going to plow through everybody else and I'm going to be reckless and careless, and it's going to be two fingers up to everyone else, and I'm going
That's
to
right.
just plow on through and do what I need to do. And I don't believe that that's what you're talking about.
Not at all. And that's a really great thing to point out, because absolutely, there are so many things that we talk about, like these words unstoppable and powerful, and they're actually quite masculine words. So, as a feminine energy, you can think, oh, you, like you say, you can run in the opposite direction because it has all the connotations or the preconceived ideas and approach that it is quite, pushing people out the way and being aggressive, etc., etc. It isn't, though. There's two things I want to say. You can define it any way you want. I mean, you can create unstoppable to work for you or not work for you. You own that word as much as anybody else would own that word, male, female, or whatever. It doesn't matter. You can own whatever word you want to own. It's your energy, it's your decision. So you create the meaning of that word yourself. You don't have to take anybody else's point of view. And also, you don't really want to be thinking of anybody else's point of view. You want to very much create your own. And the other side of it is, just imagine what unstoppable must feel like. There would have been probably times in all of our lives where we've had moments, inklings, like you say, little glimpses of what that feeling feels like. And I believe in alchemy totally. I mean, if you can recognize an energy, a feeling that you've got, then you have the power there. And once you've recognized it and you're aware of it, to alchemize it, to change it into any other energy or feeling you want. So if you are you're feeling disempowered, or you're feeling a little bit low, or feeling overreached or overwhelmed, you can say, okay, I acknowledge that I feel this way. How would I prefer to feel? Now, there are a million different feelings in the world that you can choose from. I recommend, when you're going from somewhere that's quite low energy, like overwhelm, go just up a few rungs of the ladder and go to somewhere like content, rather than try to go for ecstatic straight away. So, we have the power to take however we feel and change it at any given time. So that's something very much to remember. So if I want to feel unstoppable, I'll go back and go, well, what does that mean to me? Not what does it mean to Sheila down the road or David across the way? What does it mean to me? Unstoppable to me means I am really unafraid of anything, because I've got the resources that I need within me to deal with and change for the better or improve anything. It's kind of that kind of simple definition. So, with that in mind, if I was feeling unstoppable, what would I do with it? How do I get to unstoppable? Well, what does it feel like? It feels like energy, high energy. It feels like excited. It feels like powerful. It feels like, and you just create the whole world around you and start to let it in, that energy in, and then you'll see the difference. And very, very quickly, even if you only get to do 5 or 10% of that feeling, you're closer than you were a minute ago. And the more you practice that and the more you tune into it, the better you will become at it. And you know what? People will freak out because you've changed.
How dare you? How dare you become
How
unstoppable?
very dare you be powerful and confident and unstoppable? Coaching should come with a warning, shouldn't it?
Yeah,
It should come
definitely.
with a warning, because it's, please do not blame us for the fact that you're going to be brilliant and some people around you aren't going to like that very much. It happens when you change for the better. People, a lot of people around you don't like it, only because of their own insecurities, and nobody likes change and nobody likes people to change. So beware of that happening, and that's fine. That's other people's journeys, not your own. It shouldn't stop you, in other words. But I've had that, when I did, to complete my Tony Robbins journey, I did the fire walk with him many, many years ago. And you'd walk over the hot coals, and the whole wonderful message is, that if you can do this, walk on hot coals with bare feet, you can do anything. And I agree with it. I think that mindset is perfect, that, I can always say to myself now, I've walked over hot coals with bare feet, so I can do anything. And what's lovely about that is that type of mindset and exercises that people do are more widespread. So you don't have to go to Tony Robbins for that kind of thing anymore. You can go to, there's certain companies and coaches that do all of that, just to help you physically and mentally connect with your inner power, so you can have mind over matter and show that what you're capable of in a physical way, using your mindset to counteract the fact that you're on hot coals. So it's a very clever process, but you will, when I did that and I came away from that weekend, a very powerful weekend, a long weekend, and I came back changed. And some of my friends were like, "Oh, who's this? Who are you?" Because I already was quite psyched up. I am quite, you know what I'm like. I'm kind of like blah blah blah, and so not everyone's cup of tea. But when I came back, even more so, they were like, "Holy moly, what's happened to you?" And I'm like, I'm terribly sorry, but this is it. This is my next level. And I'm always looking for, I don't know about you, Jules, I'm sure you're the same as me, so you're always looking for your next level of improvement, of development, because there's a saying that if you're not growing, you're dying. And that sounds rather dramatic and over the top, but it's actually true, and it's the law of nature. Expansion is the law of nature. And it feels good to expand, even though there's uncomfortable spots in that expansion. The end result is you becoming more of, well, getting back to who you truly are, underneath and away from all the fearful influences and inner conversations that you have with yourself. So, yeah, I'm all for going for unstoppable, going for improvement, going for what you want, even if it's uncomfortable, and just seeing how that feels and how that vibes with you. Because when you look back on what you've achieved, that's a real sense of satisfaction and fulfillment.
Yeah, God, there's so much in what you've said, Alex, and I think that my phrase for myself is you're either evolving or revolving, because it's you're either going to be moving or you're stuck. And
Yeah.
so many people are going round and round. And this is no judgment of anybody, but I was one of those people that was, oh, this will do. This will do. This is okay. This is
Mhm.
survivable on a day-to-day basis. And I think
Right.
that wake up of, well, what would you do if you can't fail? What would your life be like if you were unstoppable? What would you really want to do? What fulfills you? And I think that
Mhm.
we're conditioned into so many different rules and constraints that we don't give ourselves the time very often, because before we know it, we've got the job, the house, the family, that we don't often give ourselves that space to then stop and go, oh,
Mhm.
hang on a second. I think that's changed. I think over the last 5 years, I think the pandemic invited a lot of that
Yeah.
self-reflection, because there was more
Mhm.
space for it. It is, and because it's become so much more mainstream, it has invited that opportunity to just start to go, hang on a second, I don't have to follow that old paradigm. And I think
Yeah.
that paradigm shift, that then when you start to embody that paradigm shift yourself, that's when I think other people are like, sorry, what are you
Mhm.
doing? No, you sit in
Yeah.
this box. You can't get out the box. And I think that
Yeah.
that's a very interesting one. And my stock phrase is about remembering that how somebody reacts says more about them than it does about you. So it's
100%.
important to remember
Mhm.
that. It's not always easy, but it is important to remember that.
I mean, what gets in the way of that is the fact that we like to people please, and we
Yeah.
like people to like us. And if those needs are stronger than the need to develop, then you won't get anywhere, because you'll always
Mm,
want to be to please everybody, and you can't, which is absolutely impossible and completely exhausting. But we want people to like us, and we have to care less about whether people like us or not. I mean, yes, of course, it's nice to be liked, but if they don't like you in your empowered self, then there's no connection that you really should be with, or you've outgrown them, and that can happen quite easily. It's not a necessarily they're awful; they just can't grow with you. And that can happen in very old and deep relationships, or marriages, for example. You can
mm,
outgrow a spouse, and you can outgrow siblings, and you can outgrow your parents, you can outgrow friends you've had for years, you can outgrow new friends, you can outgrow people. And it's a kind of evolutionary process. And I know it sounds a bit like I'm completely disconnecting from it. I'm not. There is an attachment, which is a healthy one, which is to know that your journey is your journey. Not everybody is going to be with you for the whole of your journey. People will come and people will go. And usually, trusting that process, the right people will come at the right time and the right people will go at the right time. And it's a kind of um, being okay with that, being
mm,
okay with the fact that, this is how it works. If I'm growing, then things are going to shift around. People are going to be coming and going and making complaints or just inquisitive or upset. And like you say, they're having their reaction in their way and that's their thing. God love them. But it shouldn't make you want to keep small or not evolve in any way purely because of other people's reactions, no matter how dramatic they might be. It's to keep the sense of self so strong that you, no matter what's happening around you, the chaos, that you're in the eye of the storm and you stay solid and you stay grounded and you stay connected to yourself. Because that really is how, when we talk about contentment, when we talk about power, when we talk about happiness, for example, that's where that all lies. It's within those places. It's not having our happiness or contentment or peace of mind being somebody else's responsibility. It is our own. And if that being the case, which it is, then you have to manage that. You have to make some difficult decisions. You have to move away from things that are familiar. And that's the whole point of change. And that's the whole point of growth. There is a reward to it. And the reward is that you get more connected to your true self. And therefore, overall, you feel better because there's nothing that can actually affect you anymore, in a sense. And I've always worried for people who don't like being on their own and that need to be in a relationship, because I've never been like that. I could be, total maverick, could be on my own forever, quite happily. But there are some people who really need to be with somebody all the time. And if, you are like that, or anybody like that, I would always say, you've got to have some time for yourself, because who are you on your own? I know you are. I know you're a fantastically creative and powerful human being, but that's what I know. But what do you know about yourself? What do you think about yourself? And, one of the things like we say, you and I have been doing this for years, and I think we had a chat about this before, is that it never ceases to amaze us when we're talking to people or doing a workshop or a talk somewhere, and we've said, sometimes you think, should I say that in my speech? Is it a bit obvious? Is this too silly? And then that's the thing that somebody comes back to you and goes, oh my God, when you said this, it changed my life. So I never want to miss out the fundamentals, because some people have never been taught the fundamentals of personal development. And the first thing is like, what do I want? And I want, not what I think, other people want for me, or my parents want for me, or my spouse wants for me, or whatever. It's, what do I want? And if you can answer that question authentically and not from a fearful place, then you're really on the road to self-development. And we all want to develop the self, because we're only here once, I think, unless anyone's got some information about that. I'd love to know. But in my mind, we're here once. So what are you going to do with it? Are you going to be revolving around and around and around, or are you going to evolve? And evolvement just takes a little bit of time and reflection, answering a few questions, and just reconnecting with that powerful side of yourself.
Again, so much richness. My brain's going, ask that one, ask this question, ask that question. So pinging all over the place. I think that, the conditioning, the rules, the restrictions that we don't realize that we put onto ourselves, breaking free from that can seem so daunting, and that those well-meaning people around us, they don't want us to, because it kind of then invites that for them. And
Yes.
Some of them will go, yes, I'm in. And others are like, oh God, no, I'm backing away. And I think one of the myths that we're taught at a very, very young age, it's the pinky swear, isn't it? Make up, never, never break up. That friends, family are going to be with us forever. And that's just not true, because at the end, everyone's going to die at some point. None of us are getting out of this alive. So it's remembering that, but nonetheless, it's also recognizing that for me anyway, if you're growing and changing, and that a relationship, be it an intimate one, be it a friendship, be it a work one, shifts and changes, that could be for their greatest good as well as your greatest good. And you may not know that, they may not know that until that separation happens. And I think that that's important to recognize as well, is that change in dynamic isn't just about you, it is about them, but you're not trying to orchestrate it to be a certain way. You mentioned a moment ago about being in the eye of the storm, and I think that, to me, there's a lot that seems to be going on at the moment that seems quite storm-like and chaotic in the external world. There's a lot of invitation for change. There's a lot of challenge. There's a lot of uncertainty. I think there's a bigger invitation to upgrade ourselves. And I think that is unnerving for a lot of people. So what advice or guidance that you haven't given already could you offer out to the audience?
Again, great question, and it's a big question to answer. But what really springs to mind is the whole certainty question, because that's the one thing that as humans we crave more than anything is certainty, and of course it's the one thing that we can't control. There's no certainty about anything other than the fact that you can, once you've connected with yourself, there's more of a certainty, there's more of a security, if you will, in that relationship with oneself than there is with any other relationship. So my advice would be to work on that self-certainty, your self esteem, your self-management, your self-awareness. Those three selves help develop that certainty of yourself. And when you have that certainty, then the outside world's certainty has less significance to you. You're not being blown around like the candle in the wind and feeling okay if that's happening over there and not feeling okay if that's happening over there. I always say, be aware of what's happening, but don't be emotionally attached necessarily unless you're going to be physically and mentally and emotionally doing something about it and actually trying to help a certain situation, for example, or be involved in some way. If you're just, partaking of the 6 o'clock news, then there has to be a barrier, a boundary, a protection of oneself and one's energy about what's coming at you. The trouble is, and I find this has been since 9/11, in this country, we sensationalize the news. We didn't used to. I think it was after 9/11 that we started to do that. And what I've seen is people become more cynical about the news because of the way it's presented to us. It's a huge subject. We could talk about this forever, but what I personally do, because I think it just is an energy drainer, to be honest. What I love is people like yourself doing podcasts, people doing YouTube channels and creating our own media, because we have more voices there that don't have an agenda and don't have advertisers breathing down their back necessarily, that they can come out with more authentic news and more balanced news and more, open information and a discussion around it, rather than it being, this is what we're telling you and this is what's happening and, isn't it all tragic and terrible? If we were to put out the real news that's happening in the world, there wouldn't be much time for the bad news, because I do believe that there is so much more good stuff happening in this world that we don't get to hear about because it doesn't make money. But the bad news and the drama does. If you look at all the TV, although I don't watch TV channels, I love the fact that you can create your own TV now. I'm a YouTube crazy person. I just watch what I want to watch when I want to watch it, which is perfect for a maverick like me. I couldn't wait until that was realistic. Is to make your own TV channels, come away from these huge news churning machines that only pull out the drama of it all. There's much more news out there. Make your own channels, create yourself. I don't believe everything you hear as well, because a lot of it printed and put out there on televisions isn't always necessarily the absolute truth. And so, be discerning. Don't let it eat you up and consume you, because that's what it's actually designed for. But to actually have a more balanced approach to it. But the fundamental thing is, if we're after certainty, which we all are, then the certainty is in oneself, from oneself, and nothing else really does matter at the end of the day. It's your relationship with you. It's how you perceive you that counts.
I couldn't agree more. And, it's the only forever relationship that we actually have. And yet it's the one that many tend to spend less time on, which I think is a real shame. But I think that, your forever relationship is going on right now. And if it's not how you would like it to be, then reach out to somebody who's going to help you. Because I think, going back to your point earlier, these other well-meaning people in your life, they have an agenda. Even if it is for your best interests, they still have an agenda. Whereas talking to somebody who's completely impartial, it can bring a different level and that fearlessness of asking that question or calling someone out on something in a way that is like, oh God, yeah, okay, all right then, I hadn't seen it in that way, and just giving the opportunity to see the whole picture. The analogy that popped into mind when you were talking earlier about the news was that's a spotlight and a camera pointing in one direction, where actually there's 360 view of different things and a floodlight of possibilities that are going on. The last question I will ask, I know I said the other one was the last one, but I'm going to ask this one as well. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to share?
That's a really good question. And, my message for anybody is, I mean, you have asked me everything I would imagine, but it's just to reiterate what I'm here and for and what I'm about, which is empowerment, especially for women. I've always believed if you empower the woman, you empower the whole family because of the way women are. So even if anyone listening to this decides to go on an even deeper level, if they're already on the journey, which I'm sure they are listening to your good self, they're on a journey of self-development, to go deeper, to go further, to see what you can do with it. And if this is the first time you've heard any of this stuff, then to try it out, to dip your toe in and see what it feels like for you. And just to remember the difference between the fearful voice and your empowered voice. And the fearful voice never feels good. That's a hint.
You never come out smiling listening to that.
You never come out smiling. Decisions made based on fear, you will always regret. Not necessarily straight away, because decision making is a relief in itself. But there are those decisions that you will make based on fear that longer term you may regret. So always be super, super careful. Am I coming from a powerful place, or am I coming from a fearful voice? Even if you just do that, whenever you can remember to do that, your life will change for the better, at least 50, 60%.
I'd absolutely agree. And the last thing that I would just loop it back to, which was sparked by what you've just said, is that you mentioned at the beginning your coming to your senses moment was with Tony Robbins, and the invitation that you were putting out there was, if this is new to you, then go and dive into something. And what I would say is that you may listen to somebody like Tony Robbins and be like, what the holy hell am I listening to here? Oh my God, no way. That's absolutely fine, actually. If someone like that doesn't resonate you, and if somebody like myself or Alex doesn't resonate with you, please don't mean that you put personal development in the bin. So one of the things I've never really thought about it until you were saying it then is there is somebody out there for everybody to learn from. In both the literal way and the metaphorical way as well. So don't, just because it's not an immediate teacher that you resonate with. Of course, I'm a big fan of coaching. I am a coach, and that's why I speak to great coaches and have great coaches like Alex in my life. But if coaching specifically doesn't resonate with you, don't give up on personal development. There's so many different things that you can do to make a difference in your life. And that's why I get super passionate, because I know how much it's changed my life. Alex has shared how much it's changed hers. So thank you so much. I'm going to put all of Alex's details in the show notes so that you can reach out and connect with her. But thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's absolutely delightful. And, talking with you anyway is a sheer joy, but doing it this way and having what we would call a more structured conversation than the ones you and I usually have is delightful. And it's a wonderful podcast. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Alex.